This program is about unsolved mysteries. Whenever possible, the actual family members and police officials have participated in recreating the events. What you are about to
hear is ML Soul of Detroit.
Tonight on Unsolved Mysteries, the story of
Kyle Smith, who was murdered before Super Bowl 40.
You asked interrogative questions around my suit. It's gone.
What are you doing? Come on.
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now, Al?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elric, and if I sound a little more excited than normal, it's because the NFL draft is here. The draft is here. Woo! Woo! Pick number 29. Yay! Hooray! Manufactured fun. Yay! The draft is here.
Everyone loves the draft. Don't be a jerk about it.
The draft is here.
Everyone loves the NFL draft. It's great.
Here's what I usually say when I hear there's a draft.
Yeah.
Close the damn window. What?
That was weak.
But the NFL draft is here, and it's also a chance to reflect on the last time the NFL was in town. And there were a couple of things that happened in 2006 when Super Bowl XL came to Detroit that I checked up on to see if there might be a story there, something that we could tell people about that they might not be thinking about, that they might have forgotten about, or that they might never have known happened and given them an update. The first one was the NFL was supposed to have a legacy project. I don't know if you remember that. When there's a Super Bowl that comes to town, they try and do some sort of civic thing, and it's a big deal, and it's like, oh, wow, great, and a big investment of money. And I thought, well, you know what? Kwame Kilpatrick was the mayor then, and he made a lot of big promises that didn't come through. And I remember specifically him collecting a $10 million check, a large, oversized $10 million check to increase demolitions in the city of Detroit that he actually never cashed because he kind of couldn't satisfy the donor. And so that happened.
Just disappears? Nobody gets it?
Yeah, the guy who wrote the big fake check presented to the mayor after they knocked down a house. And then Detroit City Council said, well, we've budgeted $12 million for demolitions. We just picked up $10 million we weren't counting on. So let's change the budget to $2 million for demolition, and we'll still knock down $12 million worth of houses. And this donor, this was the Robert Thompson, the asphalt guy who sold his business, gave the money to his employees, and then created a foundation to create charter schools. He's like, well, no, the $10 million was for extra demolitions. And Kilpatrick and the city council could never get their shit together, and so we never actually got the $10 million in,
So wait, Thompson. Are you saying the NFL does that whenever they have a Super Bowl somewhere? That's like their thing?
Right. So there was, at the time, there was supposed to be a big recreation center or a big place for kids, community center type place that was built. I never remember anything happening with that after they left town. They kind of break the ground while they're here, and then it moves forward. And I thought, is this another one of these things where Kilpatrick met with somebody and made a big show and it didn't happen? Well, I'm pleased to report that place does exist.
Oh.
It is there on, I believe, the west side of Detroit. So that one didn't go very far.
Cynical me, I thought that the NFL just does that to make it look good wherever they go. I didn't know they actually followed through.
Well, it's one of these things where the community has to put something into it too. I think they provide some seed money or some grant money, and then it goes forward. And this exists. It's a real place, which is cool.
Teach them to fish.
I think it's called the Dock Center. So the other thing I wanted to check in, because I remember it, but I don't remember there being a lot of coverage at the time, and that was the murder of a young woman who was outside a place, ironically, called the Good Life Lounge on Woodward, who was killed basically the day before the Super Bowl. It was really the Friday night before, early Saturday morning before the game on Sunday. She was shot at about 1:30 in the morning, died hours later. And I remember hearing about it at the time, but not hearing that much afterwards. So I wanted to revisit that case. And in that case, there was some unfinished business, which we'll be talking about
Great
it.
story.
Yeah, well, thank you. It was I had a lot of help, including some help from some retired Free Press reporters and a lot of retired police who care a lot about getting the truth out and making sure that the work that they did for all those years continues, even though they're no longer being paid to do it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in just a minute. But first, we want to thank our sponsors. This show is brought to you every week by Dr. Yaldo, who sponsors the entire Red Shovel Network. He's a guy who can help you see better than 20/20. And I'm living proof because he's a LASIK expert, and Mark and I have both had LASIK, and we both have 20/15 vision, which means for distance, we can see better than the eyes we were born with. Now, we're both getting a little older, and so it gets a little harder to read up close, and Dr. Yaldo has some procedures that can help you with that. We'll tell you about that a little later in the show. And if you want to see a brighter horizon, if you want to see a better future, go see, I sound a little bit like Al Pacino there. You can't take this kid's future.
Hooah.
Yeah, and that's the only time I'll ever sound like Al Pacino. If you want to look at retirement or your financial future with clear eyes, Luke Nowacki and Pinnacle Wealth Strategies will help you plan for a better tomorrow. I mean, quite simply, he'll help you find ways to make your money work for you while you work to get some more money for him to invest to work for you. So it's kind of a cycle that in the end can work to your advantage if you take the time to see an expert. And Luke is that expert. Also, if you want to play me in softball, volleyball, or any of the many sports that I stumble through, Come Play Detroit is registering players, individuals, groups of players, and entire teams for their sports leagues that run all year round. If you stick around, we'll give you a promo code so you can save 10% on your registration. It's a great place to have a good time. And of course, our most important sponsor is you, the one listening to us right now and giving us as little as $5 a month to help keep this show on the air. Patreon is the way you join the Soul Patrol, which means you get all kinds of great perks. And we'll tell you about those a little bit later in the show. But first, if you can calm down for a minute, I want to see if we can welcome Shawn Windsor here, because he came in like a ball of fire. But as we all know, the flame
I'm worried about him today.
that burns the brightest burns out the fastest, and it looks like he's starting to smolder.
It's good to be here.
No weird segue in anything in Shawn's world?
It's really good to be here.
This is the furthest you've traveled in about a month, right? I mean, you were kind of the road warrior for a while. Now you're just lumbering down. Was it 23 to 14 to?
You were getting burnt out.
Oh, you mean yeah?
All the travel, yeah.
Speaking of travel,
but as you can see, he's recharged.
No, this isn't some crazy thing. But
of course, Mark Fellhauer's here too.
I was thinking, yeah, good to see you, Mark. I'm curious what you guys think about this. I had to stop by a restaurant downtown Ann Arbor on the way here to pick up a microphone that belongs to the Free Press equipment for ahead of the NFL draft, because we're gonna, try to talk into a microphone for the draft and give the folks the coverage that they. So
I love that you're getting a microphone from a restaurant.
Yeah. Well, the great Dave Burkett, who covers the Lions for us, was there meeting somebody else. I had loaned him the microphone. Anyway, he was meeting an old area Lions beat writer. His name is Mike Rothstein. Do you guys remember Mike Rothstein? Worked for ESPN. I think he lived in Ann Arbor. Anyway, he's been in Atlanta for several years.
Didn't he rip off Michael Corleone? Didn't he and the guy from Cuba try and steal some money from him?
Maybe he did. Yeah.
Are you talking about Scarface?
That's Scarface? No, Hyman Roth. That's from The Godfather. Sorry.
I thought
different guy.
Yeah.
Different guy.
Anyway, so Mike has had a habit for years and years and years of taking a trip somewhere pretty interesting and then takes pictures of it. In fact, when I talked to him this day, he said he was going to go to Africa.
Most people.
No. But here's
interesting.
But here's the thing. I love his travelogues, and it's just him, and it doesn't make it about him. It's always about the place. But for so many others, I don't want to see the family photos. I don't want to see the family vacation.
No one wants to see anybody's family
exactly.
photos. Exactly.
So, and I was just thinking about that. Like, why is it different with him? Is it different when it's just a single person on a solitary trek and they make it about the place they're going and not themselves?
Yeah, 100%. And to that point, why I never understood why you would take a picture of something without you in it, because there's pictures of that thing everywhere.
Right.
I mean, the idea is to show you experiencing it. I don't really like post photos. I like candid.
I guess I also like
doing something.
I guess I also admire maybe what's his name over there? Oh, Mike Elric. I think that's his name.
It's Mr. Elric.
Mr. Elric. Sorry.
Yes,
He'll remember we had a really fantastic sort of legendary photographer by the name of William Archie. And he used to do the same thing. He'd go get a boat and ride down the Amazon, whatever. He did all over the world, and he always did it by himself. So maybe for me, there's some level of respect going out into the world like that on your own with nobody else to lean on.
I think the venue matters too, although I would love to see Shawn Windsor on vacation anywhere. I think that would be fascinating.
Really, it's pretty boring. I went to Europe a few years ago by myself, but that was just to go see an old childhood home and that kind of thing. It wasn't exciting at all. But so no, I was just thinking about that on the drive here, like the idea of going out on your own, completely on your own, and that it takes a little bit, some level of courage, right?
Well, yeah, it really does.
So we're willing to put together some money for you to go away for a while.
That'd be fine.
Perhaps our Patreon subscribers.
But it all leads to this, though. Mike takes trips with his family, but posts as if he's on his own.
Yeah.
So what's
okay.
What's that say?
But that's not true. I don't post because I'm one of these guys who's like, "Hey, I'm way far away from home. Come rob my house." I don't like that.
Wait a second. You were in the streets of London or someplace over there by yourself, and I kept seeing him by himself.
I was shooting promos for this show.
Yeah,
that was it.
Oh, okay.
I didn't post where I was or anything like that. No, that was all to hype the show. That was for the good of the community. But no, when I go on a trip, and I have tried, I spent a month backpacking in Australia by myself and had
awesome.
A great time. I did hook up with a friend of mine who was getting out of the Peace Corps, and that was nice. When you travel by yourself, you meet people, particularly if you stay in youth hostels, and you'll pick up people who say, "Hey, why don't we hike this gorge for a couple of days?" You're like, well, I wasn't planning on doing anything. Okay, and then they're like, "Well, I'm gonna go kayaking." You're like, "Well, I want to go to the beach." You're like, "Okay, well, see you later. Maybe you will, maybe you won't."
But that is a bonus, right? You get to meet people.
Yeah, in fact, I spent many months traveling one time right after college, before I kind of got into like regular gigs, and I met this guy from South Africa. His name's Leon Laubser. We ran into him when we were somewhere in Southern Europe, and then I ran into him again in Dublin, and we went to go see Morrissey. He's like, "I'm going to Morrissey." I was like, "Oh, well, I'll see if I can get a ticket." And it's just kind of weird how you cross paths with people. And Australians, they'll travel for a year because it's so far away. Everything is so far away from Australia that they'll have like a gap year. And you can bump into those men and women everywhere because they're just like, "Yeah, I'm just kind of going wherever. I got no agenda," and it's kind of a cool thing. But,
my wife and I have befriended a couple of people that we are still in contact with on vacation, right? Somebody we met in Belgium, somebody we met in Vancouver.
Oh, you went to Belgium?
Oh, yeah. I've been to Europe a handful of times. So, but traveling by yourself reminds me, have you guys seen the documentary? They called him Mostly Harmless? Because it's about hikers that hike by themselves and run into each other. Well, it turns out one showed up dead, so the hiking community rallied. Like, who knows this guy? It always
comes back to death with you.
Yeah, always. Well, it's fascinating, and this guy's background.
Or is it
story.
interesting?
Huh? I'm sorry, that is my crutch, but it is. It's remarkable. The backstory.
You have no crutches.
The backstory this guy had is incredible, and just how they tracked down who this guy was because they only knew him as the name Mostly Harmless. I don't know. It's fascinating.
So it's the mystery.
Wait. That was the guy's name? He had a handle?
Apparently, in the hiking world, everybody has a handle. Nobody uses their real name because a lot of them are
like ham radio.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So why was he mostly harmless?
Well, I mean, if you're mostly harmless, you're somewhat harmful.
Okay. Well, because the reason why I ask is because the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy describes the Earth as mostly harmless.
He claimed it was from that, but that was his self-given name.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was a really good documentary, mainly because how they when they found this body and how they figured out who it was, and this whole internet hiking community blew my mind that it exists. But then I guess any community of any group of people exists online.
Yeah. Well, when I was in Costa Rica with Sergey, he would run into people who have been riding bikes for like 6 months. Some of these folks will take a year off and they'll bump into each other and they'll say, hey, we're going this. You want to go? Okay, yeah, we'll meet you there. They'll say, hey, next year I think I'm going to go to, I'm going to bike through Thailand. You want to meet me there? Like, yeah, I think that sounds cool. Okay, well, I mean, it's they just cross paths. It's very
One of them was going to be a murderer, right, Sean?
Uh-oh.
Well, if you get your wish.
Damn, I hope Sergey's going to be okay. He's already handling all these poisonous snakes. That seems dangerous enough. But
So anyway, that was my contribution to the show.
Thank you. All right, good night.
Okay.
Take your nap now.
Let's well, let's Sean go into stasis until room 7609 when he can.
Because you had you yourself had a fascinating true crime story.
Yes, Kyle Smith, 24 years old. This is a young woman from small town Tecumseh, kind of a tough kid, a tomboy, someone who was known for being pretty funny, pretty
Is that redundant,
charming.
by the way?
What's that?
Small town Tecumseh? Or is it a metropolis that we don't know
There must
about?
be a Tecumseh somewhere that's large. But
Yeah.
there's
Just descriptive. Not like that you edited, Mo.
But yeah, no, I mean for everybody else who's never been to Tecumseh, I'm here to tell you it's a small town.
I've been to Tecumseh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of one of those places where it says "Welcome to Tecumseh"
And where the track coaches
and come back
do bad things.
soon on the same side of the
Wait, what?
Side of the fight.
What?
You remember that, right, Mike?
Was that you're not going to do the diddle that way? Was that that's the line I remember?
Yeah.
So Sean, you got to tell people about this. 'Cause
I don't
this
even
was-
remember
Now
about
there's
it.
more true crime?
Yeah, it was. So this was a track coach he was a young guy who became Sean Windsor and Jim Schaefer did this story for the Free Press. I think while I was at Channel 4, which is when this murder I wanted to talk about, and Sean said he didn't have anything to talk about. Then he interrupted me, and we're going to talk about his story instead. But anyways, we'll get to that in an hour. So this guy was a good buddy of all the kids on the track team, the boys and the girls, and he would show up.
That's a red flag.
Yeah, he would show up at their parties, and I think he would throw parties.
He threw parties for him.
Yeah, and I can't remember whether he got kind of creepy with the girls, but then I think he tried to help the guys hook up with the girls, and there was some question about statutory this and that. And the thing I remember most about this story is he called himself something like the Diddle. And when one of the kids said they were going to tell the authorities or their parents, and this is the quote I remember from the story, he's like, "You're not going to do the diddle like that, are you?" Or whatever he called himself.
God.
And
yeah, it was a big scandal, and he ended up in prison. And there was a football player that was at Michigan State or going to Michigan State.
He was a cornerback, I think, that was a pretty good recruit for Mark D'Antonio early in D'Antonio's tenure, who was going to go to Michigan State. But when Sean, who really wants to give people the benefit of the doubt and a second chance, when Sean's story came out, it ruined this kid's life. So good job, Sean. He did not end up playing for Michigan State.
Yeah, that was back when I dallied briefly with being a reporter. Mm-hmm. And that was those days.
Do you miss that? Do you miss being a reporter instead of a columnist?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do. When I was down in Tiffin, Ohio for the eclipse a few weeks ago.
Not having the burden of being right is quite a relief.
Just talking to folks out and about. If sports is so structured, right? It's all around events. I mean, the games themselves, that's where the mystery is, but that's within a structured confine. You get out into the rest, the news, the rest of the world, you don't know where you're going to end up, and I do miss that a little bit.
Well, ML, so
before Sean eclipses the show, Kyle Smith.
I am wearing a jersey, not a jersey, a hoodie with your name on it. So yeah, let's get to you.
And of course, there's that tramp stamp with the ML on it, but we don't need to get into that.
What does that mean? Did you pitch or catch?
Oh my God!
No, ML is
he's a versatile.
ML is just part of it's a whole word there on there.
So you pitch and you catch.
No. It's millennial, and I just tramp stamp on Sean. But anyway, thank God those of you watching on Patreon don't have to see that. But for $5, this would be a good time to avert your eyes. Kyle Smith from the metropolis of Tecumseh.
18 years ago.
Super
Bowl 40.
Yeah. So she was a kid who wanted to get out of whatever size burg it was to get to Detroit. And when she got here, she had a little problem with the white horse and became a heroin addict. And her family was very worried about her. She was probably around 20 at the time. and was hanging out in some very dangerous drug houses where she met a guy that most people may remember, a fella named William Melendez. Now, you probably don't remember that name, but you probably do remember his street name, which was Robocop.
I'll say this too: if you see pictures of him and pictures of Kyle, if you follow the news, though, you'll remember. I mean, these were big stories.
Yeah, so Robocop ended up going to prison for beating a motorist named Floyd Dent in Inkster during a traffic stop. The video was all over the place. And
planted drugs on him.
Yeah, it was a very, very bad deal. Now, the amazing thing is that he was free in 2015 to do that because in 2003, he and almost 24 other cops from Southwest Detroit were put on trial by the feds in a massive police corruption case where they alleged that these cops had gone rogue and were basically beating the shit out of drug dealers, drug users to try and build drug cases, to try and take dopers off the street. But what the feds said is, in the course of making these cases and building your evidence, you're violating their civil rights, that they were coercing people, they were planting drugs and guns on them, that they were doing illegal searches. Now, this was a big case. It went on for like 5 months, and a jury convicted none of the cops.
All were acquitted.
Melendez he faced 25 charges, and one of the witnesses against him was Kyle Smith. And she claimed that he had stopped her in a car and was doing illegal searches, no probable cause, threatening to plant drugs on her. And then not too long after that, and he did it because he wanted to get information on a drug house that he apparently knew she frequented. Then a month or so after that, they raided the drug house and she was in there. And they took her in a room and said, okay, where's the drugs? She said, I don't know, no drugs here. They searched her, and her family claims that Robocop performed a cavity search on her, which is not something police are allowed to do. And then basically told everybody, okay, there's no drugs here, and walked away.
And that's her story. I mean,
and she testified against him in federal court and was terrified. Her family was terrified that Robocop was going to kill her, but he didn't. And she kicked heroin and turned her life around, and was basically, by the time the Super Bowl came here, the aunt, the cousin, the sister, the daughter, anybody in the family, they wanted to come to Detroit to hang out with Kyle Smith because she lived in the Trolley Plaza apartments, loved Detroit, was a huge Detroit booster, and was out enjoying the winter blast and partying. And she got shot to death on Woodward Avenue.
Now, I remember both stories. I never knew there was a connection to Kyle's murder and this other Melendez case. Was that covered a lot? Like how quickly after her testifying was she shot?
So that case was in 2003, and the Super Bowl was 2006, February of 2006. So about two and a half years later. And I don't remember anybody making that connection at the time. Now, maybe a reporter did, and I didn't see their story because I don't remember there being very much coverage of this case. But Laura Berman, a former Free Press columnist who became a news columnist, did do some stories on this case and tried to keep her name in the headlines because it was an unsolved murder. Now, we have about half the murders in Detroit go unsolved. No matter how many people get killed in Detroit, it seems our closure rate still remains around 50%. And I think the no-snitch culture is a big contributor to that. But this case was kind of high profile, but not. I mean, the eyes of the world were on Detroit for the Super Bowl. It's the biggest party in the world, contrary to what the Indy 500 and the Kentucky Derby people say. But this case didn't really seem to get much attention. And the thing that surprised me, and I had missed this story at the time, is that 2 years after Kyle was killed, the Detroit police spokesman, James Tate, who's now a city councilman, said that it's not a cold case, it's a case of delayed arrest, which is a term I've never, ever heard before. And I think most police will tell you, we've never heard it before either.
I thought it was interesting. He wouldn't talk to you for the story, wouldn't really even make a comment about it. Why would that be? I mean, that's not really helping move anything forward.
Well, sadly, it's not surprising because James Tate, who was a former member of the media, who became a spokesman for Mayor Kilpatrick and then for the Detroit Police Department, rarely speaks these days. In fact, he has a communications specialist, which means your tax dollars are paying for someone to speak for him, and this person wouldn't speak either. Now,
I mean, it'd be simple to say delayed arrest is something I came up with. It meant it was a cold case, but we're working hard on it. We know we're going to arrest somebody. I mean, he could just say it's just a term I came up with. Instead, he's dodging it.
Now my sense is he didn't come up with it. I mean, James was a deputy chief, but he's a civilian. And if you know anything about law enforcement and spokespeople, they don't trust the spokespeople. They don't let their hair down around them. They don't give them the inside story on the investigation. So anything James would have said about this probably came from someone above him, from the brass or from some investigator who wanted to, just basically say, go away, kid, you bother me. And so I wondered, where'd you hear that term? What does that term mean? The delay is now on 18 years. So Did something not work out that you thought was going to work out?
What were you able to, so he's the spokesman at the time. Were you able to talk to the chief at that time?
So Tate sadly wouldn't speak, which is frankly shameful when you're a public official. He was paid by us to be a spokesperson. Now he's paid by us to represent us as a councilman. You'd think the obligation to serve your constituents remains, or maybe is even more prevalent, but whatever. So Ella Bully Cummings was the chief at the time. And the other thing I was curious about is, did the mayor try and cover this up? Did the city want this thing to be swept under the rug that they rolled out, the red carpet they rolled out for the Super Bowl? And so I tried to speak to people with the Kilpatrick administration. Those people don't really like getting my calls. And so I tried to reach Ella Bully Cummings, who was the chief at the time. And she's now an attorney in private practice, left multiple voicemails, sent her an email, no response at all, which...
That's sad.
When you give people 2 weeks to respond, you have to believe it's not because they're too busy, it's because they don't want to talk. And when you want to talk to them about a high-profile case, you, I think, quite fairly can assume it's something they don't want to talk about because they don't have any good news, or what they're going to say may not make them look as good as they like to look.
When you were poking around and making calls to people about the story, what was the reaction? Was it like, oh, this story? This is what you're doing? This is why you're looking into this?
Yeah, so finding any of the police who worked on it at the time have retired. And so some retired officers were really helpful in terms of talking to me about what they knew at the time, how they worked on the case. Some of them didn't want to talk about it at all, and I don't know why, but that's unfortunate. And I did get a call.
Well, they didn't solve it, so I think maybe that could be part of it.
Sure, but you have to understand, the other thing about this isn't like today, where when you go downtown, there's weapons detectors, there's devices to find out where gunshots are fired, there's high-definition cameras that work in low light that capture probably every damn thing. There's facial recognition software. This is 2006, which doesn't seem that long ago, but downtown didn't have all the businesses it has now. It didn't have all the residents. It didn't have all the cameras. And in fact, police said none of the cameras on businesses were either working or had a good view of what happened. So
you start calling people and poking around. What was the reaction?
And it happened at 1:30 in the morning, and somebody bumped into somebody and somebody shot somebody and they ran. I mean, this is going to be a tough case to make, so there should be no shame that you don't have an arrest. There should be shame in not being willing to talk about it, not being open and transparent with the family. So one of the things I did find out from talking to a retired investigator is that they did have a suspect and they did have witnesses. And the witnesses some of them were drunk, some of them were uncooperative, some of them didn't want to get involved, and some of them lived out of state, and they're just like, you know what, we're going home, forget about this. And there was one guy that they shared the name with the family, and we're not going to share it because he hasn't been arrested. But I'll tell you, his last name was McKenzie, and the family knew a guy back home who was kind of a troublemaker, whose nickname was Spud. And so they thought, well, wait a minute,
Oh.
Do they think that Mackenzie's the guy because this guy's nickname is Spud? And no one could ever make any sense of that. It's just kind of two things they put together that didn't seem to amount to much. But one of the suspects that police really liked in this case, which means they didn't like him because he's a bad dude, worked at an auto plant or some sort of factory and was able to show time cards that he was on the job at the time the shooting happened. But of course, people fill out other people's time cards and get them clocked in all the time. And if you're going to go to a big party
Still
during the
pretty-
Super Bowl,
pretty big alibi.
you may get a buddy to put your time card in for you so the boss doesn't know that you're, kicking it downtown. And they couldn't get any of the colleagues, any of his coworkers to basically say definitively he wasn't here or we didn't see him.
Yeah.
Now, my sense is that Mr. McKenzie and his colleagues will be getting called again because shortly after this incident, Mr. McKenzie went in the jug for home invasion, like 2 months after this shooting, and then 18 months later got in trouble for something else and spent a little time in prison. So he definitely is not the most law-abiding cat you've ever run into. So maybe police will shake something loose because one of the things you find out with these cold cases is people are willing to talk. And the former assistant chief, I think he made it to assistant chief. If not, he was a deputy chief at one time, Craig Schwartz, said what happens over the passage of time is girlfriend becomes ex-girlfriend, and so she's willing to talk. Wife becomes ex-wife, and she's willing to talk. Buddy gets in trouble. So Buddy needs a little help. He says, hey, you want to solve that 18-year-old murder? Let me tell you what I know about my pal. And sometimes what ends up happening is the shooters get shot by somebody else, and somebody can just say, hey, that asshole you're looking for, he died 5 years ago, and I'm willing to give you some information to help close the case. So police say they're going to look at this again.
Yeah, Schwartz told you that they're resubmitting the ballistics to, I guess there's a national database.
Yeah, so not Schwartz, but this is a
okay.
current commander, Ian Severy of Major Crimes. He said, we're going to try and use technology. I'm like, well, what does that mean? I don't think there was much DNA. These guys were kind of strangers in the night. And he didn't want to specify what the technology was, but one of the former investigators I talked to said that there's a database of bullets, and you put the bullet in the database, and over time, if that gun's been used in another crime, you may match it up. And so it's probably been 18 years since anybody's checked that bullet against other bullets, if it was ever checked at all. And so now I think we can expect Detroit police to see whether that bullet matches a bullet used in another case, and if there was arrest, that could bring...
Wait, so do you know, have they submitted that bullet?
Well, that's one of the things
and I
they
only
don't
say
want to
that,
talk about.
I only say that because you also asked, like, hey, what was the last entry on this cold case? And they were a little evasive about it.
They were, and the family, Kyle's family, feels very strongly that the only time police actually make an effort in this case is when it comes up in the media. So I was reluctant to call them because you really don't want to, say, hey, can we talk about your worst day ever? How about that? Does that sound like a fun topic? No, nobody wants to talk about that, but they actually were glad and were very gracious and very open with what they knew because they're hoping that a little media attention will help get the police moving on this again, and maybe shaking the trees, something will fall out of them.
Well, it's tricky, though, because I do feel, based on what I remember and based on your article, the police busted their ass to try and solve this and just ran into a dead end, and then maybe just kind of like, all right, on to the next one because the Super Bowl is here.
Well, there is that.
Every department seemed to be working on trying to solve this one murder.
Yeah, see, I don't remember there being that big surge back then. I don't remember this being a high priority case.
I remember it being on the news a lot.
Yeah,
for that week.
I just didn't see
just that week.
that much of it. But
therefore, it didn't happen.
No, it just means, well, and I didn't find a bunch of clips about it either. I think let's put it this way. Every reporter right now that's available is worried about the draft. So if something else happens, there's not going to be that many people writing about it or paying attention because everybody's eyes are somewhere else. And it also means after this big event goes, everybody's going to be exhausted for a while.
Did you talk to Joe Swickard? I
did talk to Joe Swickard. In fact, Joe Swickard is a legendary Detroit Free Press reporter, member of the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. Great writer. If you like noir and that sort of 50s, 40s patois, Joe Swickard is your guy. In fact, I quoted a line from his story from
Great
2007 about this. And as I told Joe, I said, I wouldn't have quoted you if I could have written it better myself, but he nailed it. And so I called every cop I could think of who was on the job back then. I called former reporters. Ben Schmidt was one of them to see, hey, have you got any sources you can put me in touch with? Had trouble finding the family. I called Joe Swickard, who, by the way, retired several years ago, more than several years ago, now lives out of state, which means he's moved at least once. And I said, hey, Joe, any chance you have a number that you can help me with? He's like, well, I'm out walking. Some of my files were lost in the flood, but I probably do have a box of index cards. Maybe I'll find it in a box somewhere. And I said, okay, well, I kind of cross my fingers and start calling phone numbers, none of which work. And then I get a text from Joe with 5 phone numbers. And I call the first one, leave a message. Second one, disconnected. Third one, disconnected. Fourth one, disconnected. Fifth one, I get a voicemail. I leave a message. And I get a call the next day from Kyle Smith's mother. So Joe Swickard, 17 years later,
unbelievable,
pulls 5 phone numbers for me. Now, I don't know if he found them online or if he found them on that index card, but, the Free Press has some resources where we're able to track people down that most other folks can't. None of that worked, but Joe put me in touch with the mother, who was very gracious, and met with her last Monday.
What was the line, by the way?
Small town, you may have heard of it. It's Tecumseh.
What was the line, by the way? Can you read that to us?
I could if you'd given me a heads up, but it's going to take a minute. Let me find it here.
Well, you were mentioning, I saw the line too. It was great. It reminded me of that era of the Free Press.
Maybe you could have made a note of it. So here's what Joe said. Joe wrote, so I wrote in my column, and we'll have a link to my column on our website.
It's a great column, by the way. And Dave Burkett said to say hi, and that he thought that was a great story.
Can I get my microphone back?
Yeah.
From Burkett. When Shawn and Dave Burkett got together, we had one great sports writer in the same place.
No, he's the best.
No offense to
Same
Dave.
thing when Dave and I get together.
Someday Dave will be Shawn Windsor level. But he's
the best.
Here's what Joe Swickard wrote. So I wrote, one day before the big game, Smith. Okay. Anyways, Schwartz points out this. So, okay, I got to set it up.
It's got to start with your words first.
So, well, actually, we're going to start with Craig Schwartz's words. Craig Schwartz, the former deputy chief, who was involved with federal agencies, local agencies, trying to make sure every.
You don't need that kind of setup.
Well, I could get it out of the way.
You asked the question.
Yeah, if I could.
It's a description of how she died, right, on the sidewalk.
Well, it's a partial sentence. It's going to sound weird if I just start in the middle of a sentence, don't you think? Do you want me to start in the middle of the sentence and then we can do a comparison, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the crowds packing Woodward Avenue when she bumped shoulders with a young man.
Smith was knocked to the pavement.
There were shouts, then shots, then death on a cold sidewalk surrounded by strangers.
Okay, read that again with some,
Well, I was thinking I would read it with I thought I'd read it with the setup so that we could build to it, but you just want to jump right. Here's what Shawn's honeymoon's like. Can we do some kissing, perhaps some heavy petting? No, just get your pants off. You're my wife now.
And here's what your honeymoon's like. Here's what your honeymoon's like. Oh, okay, nice.
Let's look in the mirror for a bit.
No, well, that too. No, okay, we might have a chance to make love 20 years from now.
It's tough not to look in the mirror when it's above the heart-shaped rotating bed.
A lot of talking to do first. I got to tell you all about myself, and that's going to take a couple of decades, and then we can make love.
I do have some more questions, though. Can I ask you some more questions?
So let's do this properly.
Yeah, no, seriously, because it's a great line.
This is a deputy chief talking about, we tried to prevent everything we could, but, and this is Craig Schwartz's words, also well put, you can never prevent everything. One day before the big game, Smith proved that point with her life. My former Free Press colleague Joe Swickard wrote in a 2007 story that Smith was in the crowds packing Woodward Avenue when she bumped shoulders with a young man. Smith was knocked to the pavement. There were shouts, then shots, then death on a cold sidewalk surrounded by strangers. And now there's going to be some cuddling and a cigarette. Post-coital
In talking to Kyle's mother, Vicky
Mark
Cup.
is exhausted.
No, I'm not exhausted. I just had some questions. Vicky Cup, Kyle's mom, does she? I mean, I know, of course, she has hope that this is going to get solved, but do you think she really believes that it's ever going to get solved and that they're going to throw the right resources at it?
It's been so long, they hope it will be solved,
but don't believe it will.
But they're not counting on it, and they also can't rule out that Robocop is responsible. That's
where I was
their
getting
theories.
to. Yeah, I mean, the conspiracy theory would be that she testified against this.
Yeah, but that's
cop.
3 years later. Does that make a lot of sense?
To me, no. But the family might.
Well,
they might have more insight as to what Kyle felt before she maybe. I don't know if she was followed or.
Well, and I believe even though RoboCop beat the federal rap, he was subsequently or before too long fired by Detroit police. So he could have been bearing a grudge. It could have been taking a while for him. And again, I'm not accusing him of anything.
I find it really hard to believe because would you really do it in that public of a setting with a bunch of witnesses around?
Right. So here's what one of the investigators told me. Eyewitnesses said that Kyle was shot with a Tech 9 or by a 9mm with an extended clip. And the investigator said, and this is a longtime homicide investigator, said that if that's true, that kind of weaponry is indicative of a gang hit, and that she was bumped by someone. And again, Kyle's funny and charming and a great relative, but also pretty salty, pretty tough broad, that she was giving it back to this guy on the street. And so this investigator told me sometimes someone will bump you to engage you to shoot you. And the bumping is a pretext so it doesn't look like a hit. So it seems like it's a more spontaneous event. Now, this investigator doesn't believe that Melendez was a suspect, and I haven't found anybody in law enforcement who thinks that Melendez was a suspect. And
what
in fact,
does the family feel about it?
Melendez's lawyer says there's no way that's the craziest thing I've ever heard, and he also offers his condolences to them. But the family says they can't rule it out because they said that before the trial, RoboCop told Kyle that if you testify, you're going to be sorry, I'm going to get you. And of course, she did testify. And of course, he wasn't convicted, so he was free. And, I don't know RoboCop. A lot of people thought he was a great cop, by the way. A lot of people in the 4th Precinct in Southwest Detroit where he worked loved this guy, and his commander testified on behalf of these officers, which is an extraordinary thing.
Yeah, I mean,
in a police corruption trial for a serving commander to testify.
I understand why because those federal charge where they're the means justify the end, and who really cares if some druggie's civil rights were trampled on?
Yeah,
right?
No, but they call it a noble endeavor case. Like, so you beat up some dopers to help convict some dopers, but. But here's the thing.
On a societal level, maybe.
No, but Mike, get back to that theory for a second. What do you think of that? The
so
idea
Melendez,
of bumping.
so it's been 3 years, okay, right? Well, I'll tell you what. I don't know him, but I know me. And if I thought you tried to stitch me up, I wouldn't forget that over 3 years. I wouldn't forget that over 300 years. And if I was the kind of guy who was beating people's asses,
you're scaring Mark,
and planting evidence and weapons on them,
do to me.
Damn, man.
I would.
Okay, so
if I saw my opportunity, and who knows, maybe he was working with gang members at the time. I mean, it's worthy of speculation.
It's possible, but is it really that probable?
No, but get back to the more interesting thing is that it was a gang head that somebody bumped somebody on the sidewalk to stage it, essentially, right? What do you think of that, Mike?
I think it can happen, but I think there's a level of sophistication there. I mean, I think most of these murders in Detroit between people who have a beef with them, they happen where somebody drives by your house and they throw a Molotov cocktail in the window, or they spray your house and they just hit everybody. Maybe the neighbor, maybe a little kid, who knows? And we see way too much of that. That a lot of these hotheads are not planning how they're going to do it. So to think that someone who would want to kill Kyle? What's the motive? I mean, she worked for a trucking company. She was living in Trolley Plaza. In fact, her mother said she was so worried about Robocop that she picked the Trolley Plaza Apartments, which are on Washington Square, Washington Boulevard, not too far from the book Cadillac. They call it Trolley Plaza because there used to be a plaza with trolleys there. In fact, my dad's third wife was married to a trolley driver. Anyway, that's a different story. She picked that apartment building because they had security, and her mother says she slept with a sawed-off shotgun under her mattress because she was worried that Robocop was going to get her. Now, her fears don't necessarily mean he would do that, but this was a legitimate concern the family had, and I don't see just street thugs saying we're going to bump somebody and pretend it's a bump so we can shoot them, because why would they have a beef against Kyle? But maybe somebody who said, hey, I know you're a bad dude. I'm a bad dude. You help me. I help you. Maybe there's some money involved. Maybe there's not. I can't rule it out. Now, again, I want to be crystal clear that I'm not suggesting that Robocop did it, but maybe Kyle ran up against somebody else when she was running in the streets who had a score to settle. I think it's highly unlikely because, unfortunately, we see all too often shitheads who respond to minor stimulus with maximum force.
Especially at 1:30 in the morning.
When
people are drinking.
I mean, there'd be other times.
Outside the club. Yeah. But I don't know.
That makes the most sense, right?
Do you do a hit in a public place?
Well, I mean, look at Michael Corleone. You know, he's a fictional character, but he did it in a public place. He made it in such a way that everybody was shocked. Nobody got a good description, and he ran out.
Okay, well, to that point, and this is really my big question to my last question.
Plus, if you wanted to kill somebody and you didn't want to be a suspect, why not do it in a public place where everybody's out and about? It's dark out. You're going to run away.
Sure, okay.
People won't see you. That, to me, if you're going to do a hit, is much smarter than one day you're walking across the street, you see a red dot on your forehead, and then it's strawberry jam against the wall.
Well, okay, you're incredibly thorough with your reporting, but there's one person I'm wondering if you tried to track down or what happened to him, and that is that Kyle Smith was not by herself when she was murdered. She had a friend who was also wounded. Do we know anything about this witness? Do we know what this witness could provide?
Yeah. Well, so the witnesses, we don't know who the witnesses were, but her friend, Kyle, was with someone who was shot trying to shield her body. And he is alive and well. I spoke to his father, and his father didn't want us to use his name.
Sure. Don't blame him.
Understandable.
And his father said that this young man was traumatized for years, that he suffered PTSD. I think there may have been some self-medication involved, and that it's a topic that he won't talk about, and for years was withdrawn. And it was something that haunted him, and I suspect does to this day, although it sounds like he's in a better place in 2024 than he was for many years after this happened in 2006. And I debated whether to include his father in my story. We tend not to want to use unnamed people unless there's extraordinary circumstances, but we would have used this young man's name, and I guess now he's probably 45, so I guess he's not such a young man, although still in the prime of life, said the 56-year-old. But I decided, just because there was so much in the story, not to include that. But the father felt like police didn't really take a hard run at this. But he also said, I don't know what they were doing. He felt like the city tried to keep it quiet, although he said, that's just my feeling. I don't have any facts to back that up. And he said his biggest concern was that crime victims don't get much help, that there's nobody out there looking out for them. And I thought about that. And as we were talking to him, I thought, well, the prosecutor has a crime victims advocate. Police have somebody that can help you. There's all sorts of services out there. But you know what? As I was thinking about that, they wouldn't get involved with this guy because there's no case. The Detroit police never forwarded a suspect for prosecution. So the prosecutor and all the services that are available would never be extended to this young man because there was no case. So this whole notion that once we're prosecuting somebody, we try and get some wraparound services, I guess if we never catch anybody, you never get in the system where the system can say, we'd like to help you, which when I got off the phone with him, I was just thinking to myself, how tragic. You have an unsolved murder. There's no justice. There's no resolution. And in many cases, there's no help. And that's just so deep that I don't even like to think about it because it's just so fucking sad.
Yeah, I can't. And you ended the article with the sister's comments too, where it's like, yeah, we want her murder solved, but like you said, there's 52% are cleared.
Yeah, so
48% of murders just don't get solved. I can't imagine.
So we had
being that
411
family.
homicides in 2006, only 252 last year. And when I say only, I mean my condolences to the 252 families that lost a loved one. The closure rate is about the same. So now you also, I think, can presume that 2003 closure rate will improve because those are fresh cases. But yeah, there's a lot of people who don't get justice.
Now, I'm going to ask you the question that was in the headline there. Is do you think it was swept under the carpet because the Super Bowl was here?
I don't think it was swept under the carpet. And the delayed arrest comment came 2 years after the incident. I think police tried their best. And one of the things that the investigator told me is we had so many officers working on it, we may have gotten in each other's way, which may have actually impeded our investigation. But I will tell you, in 2008, when this totally made-up term of delayed arrest comes up, that's when I start to think that somebody's playing games. And that's something that really troubles me. And I wish Chief Bully Cummings would have said something. And I wish Detroit City Council President Pro Tem James Tate would say something about it because they gave this family a false expectation. And that is just wrong. If they made a mistake, if they misspoke, if they were told to say something for any reason whatsoever, I think they morally have an obligation. And as public officials and former public officials, I think they have a statutory or a constitutional obligation to tell this family the truth, and they're just not willing to do it. And that is just outrageous to me.
It's a really good article.
It's fabulous, and I love it when you do stuff like this, Mike. We're lucky to have you at the Freep, and I hope you stick around for a while.
Well,
it's the most sincere thing I've ever heard you say.
If I get that microphone back.
Well, I mean it.
I know you mean it.
I'm always sincere.
Well, I'll tell you what a couple readers had to say about it that wasn't quite so flattering,
yes.
but we'll
save that for feedback.
We'll save that for feedback
Okay.
because we hope you'll read this story. This is the kind of thing that the Free Press does. This is why we encourage you to subscribe, because this story takes a long time, takes a lot of resources, and it's the kind of thing you'll only read at the Free Press. Even if the folks in City Hall wish we were just blowing sunshine up everybody's ass, it's important because the other thing is, if we don't write stories like this, these cases will be forgotten.
I mean, this article has the makings of a book all over it. You have the Melendez angle. You have the NFL involved. You would hope that, hey, maybe a podcast will take it up and work with the police department, put it all out there, and let the sleuth go at it.
Yeah, and we should also say the Free Press has also published all kinds of, ice cream and apple pie about the draft. We had a whole special section on the draft. So if you're feeling like, oh, there's the Free Press, always picking they pick the one bad apple out of the whole barrel. Our barrel is overflowing with
I'd rather
apples.
read this. Yeah.
So how do you like that?
Well, you would, of course. Yeah. Right?
Well, does not, but
You love the macabre.
No,
I think a lot of
I
people.
am not unique in that, though.
No,
people
you're not.
are,
No, that's why Mike and I
want
were
crime
obsessed
solved.
with Shetland.
Yeah, you want crime solved, and this is a real crime that happened under some odd circumstances.
I'm concerned that the next time I go to Shetland, there'll be no people because for such a small place, they die at such a staggering.
I know.
The per capita death rate there from homicide
But the
is
closure
through
rate,
the roof.
the closure rate's 100%. So that's
that's true too. Well, so that's the other reason the population is going to be wiped out. Half of them are either dead or in
up.
prison for killing them. It's just going to be me, the cops, and those little horses.
No, it's great piece though, and I mean that. And by the way, I'm always sincere.
You are sincere.
I say what I mean, and I'm sincerely need to use the restroom. So let's get to the song. Please.
we got a ways before we get there.
Not there yet, son.
Man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys.
So just to give you a break between the gunfire, we gotta tell you a little bit about our sponsors. Dr. Yaldo is the guy. If you need help with your eyes, he's the man. Every week for the last 25 years, a few dozen people excitedly leave Dr. Yaldo's surgical suites. They've just gotten custom LASIK or bifocal lens implants. That's the one that helps you see near and far when you get a little older. That's something I need to think about. And are already seeing the world in ways they had dreamed they would. Those first moments of seeing things in sharp focus without glasses or contacts or reading glasses is a revelation. And I'll tell you what, when I got this LASIK done, funny story about Channel 4. I had to wear glasses on the air for a couple weeks because you can't wear your contacts before you have LASIK done for a certain amount of time. We spent more time in the news director's office figuring out what glasses I would wear for the next 2 weeks.
Really?
Than we ever did talking about a story. So that's crazy.
Hey, why do you have to wear glasses while doing a report? I mean,
I couldn't see. I had shitty eyes.
Well, did you have to read? You didn't have a teleprompter, did you?
No, but I mean, when you're chasing somebody, you don't want to run into a mailbox.
Oh, I was thinking of like a stand-up or an intro.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I guess maybe they did give me some
prompter. It made you look
but
smarter.
I was terrible. Well, it'd make me look smarter. It's a mask, but with Einstein's face on the
with
front
Sean's
of it.
head, a Sean mask.
That's it. So that'd be like one of those. I wonder if you get one of those Mucha Lucha or whatever they call the wrestlers.
La
masks.
Lucha Libre?
Yeah, with Sean's face on it.
Oh, you could get one like Robert Durst had when he was trying to run. That was a realistic mask. It kind of looked like Sean, I thought.
Who's Robert Durst again?
What? Who's Robert Durst?
Serial killer?
Robert Durst is the real rich heir in the subject.
Oh, yeah, the wrestling guy, right?
No, you're...
That's Steve
you're
Carroll.
John DuPont.
John DuPont. Yeah, sorry.
Which another fascinating case. No, The Jinx on HBO was probably the best documentary ever, and it was about Robert Durst, and he participated.
Oh, he talked himself into prison, right?
Ended up being his downfall.
Yes.
And now they've done a follow-up 9 years later as to how did he get arrested the day before the finale ran and what happened with that case. And that just premiered again. But in the premiere for season 2, they showed the mask when he was arrested that he had because he was planning to escape to Cuba. And it was one of those real life masks that you would,
really?
Mission Impossible type
Yeah,
mask.
yeah.
But I thought it kind of looked like Sean myself.
Oh, damn. Well, for what it's worth, Dr. Yaldo doesn't condone any kinds of crimes. He just wants you to see clearly. And if those cops had LASIK done, they would have spotted that bogus mask right away.
Yeah.
So anyways, some blink in disbelief after they've had the LASIK done. Some say, oh, this is amazing. And some, mostly females, actually cry. I was a little teary-eyed myself, but what does that say about me? I'm just in touch with my feminine side, I guess. What once seemed to be a miracle now happens every day at the Yaldo Eye Center. Be free of all of it, contacts and glasses for you younger people, and freedom from bifocal glasses and readers for those of us 45 plus who can finally see the smallest stuff on their phones without needing a little boost. There's a solution for everybody at the Yaldo Eye Center, whether you're nearsighted, farsighted, or astigmatic. Get a free evaluation at 1-800-398-EYES or at yaldoeyecenter.com. You'll find a link to their website on our website. And if you go see the doc, tell him, I saw you, but not very well, on our website. But when I leave your place, I will see clearly now the contacts are gone.
Hey, Sean, how many reads do you think we made it through while you went upstairs?
1.
Yeah, but you were intimately involved in a high-profile murder and abscondment.
He's going to just be confused by it.
You know, when he listens back to the show, he'll love it because I know he reviews every show.
I'll tell you later.
Tell me what happened.
Don't worry about it. We're doing the show. Go ahead.
Sean,
what else do you have to tell us
Sean,
about?
I don't want to play pretender, but just for a second, pretend you're a big-time city official who can travel on the people's dime. Or maybe you're a political contributor who gets hooked up with government contracts. Well, good for you. Whenever I hear that, I think of Christian Bale.
Yeah.
Bad for the rest of us. Now, if you're not among the swells lining your pockets with that's a Joe Swickard word, by the way. Don't you think, Sean?
Sure, you've got 13 seconds.
Just talking about Joe. If you're not among the swells lining your pockets with taxpayer money, if you're someone who actually works for a living, call financial specialist Luke Nowacki at 248-663-4748. We'll discuss strategies to grow your assets from annuities to individual retirement accounts to college savings. Make that call now. You've got kids and kleptocrats to feed after all. Luke Nowacki, 248-663-4748. We'll have a link to Luke's site on our website because when you call Luke, he'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc. member FINRA SIPC.
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc. is separately owned and other entities and or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent.
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc.
And on the backside of Geek of the Week, I'm going to tell you about Come Play Detroit and how you can help the show. But first, our Geek of the Week. You ever go to a restaurant and have to pay extra for sour cream or guacamole?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
You get chili and you want cheese and onions. Like, well, that's an upcharge, 50 cents. You know, like, oh, okay, well, just doesn't seem like that much, but whatever. Okay. Well, a 32-year-old man was charged with multiple felonies after he allegedly shot a Chipotle restaurant employee in the knee because he was upset the portion of guacamole he'd been served wasn't large enough, reports my friend and rival George Hunter of the Detroit News. This guy went to the Chipotle restaurant earlier this month on Evergreen Road across the street from the Southfield Police Headquarters. Yeah,
another great place to commit a crime.
Good thing doing crime where there's more cops per capita than any place else in town. Calmly picked up his bag of food and strolled away. Officers pulled over his vehicle and arrested him minutes after the shooting. They didn't have to go far. Charged him with assault with intent to do great bodily harm less than murder, discharging a weapon in or at a building causing injury, and 2 counts of possession of a firearm in the commission of a felony. That's a 2-year automatic rip, folks. He was held in the Oakland County Jail and faced up to 10 years in prison, plus an additional 2 years on the firearm charge. The victim, we're happy to report, was in stable condition at the time George reported this. But the way this went down, my man goes in there, says, I'd like a little more guacamole.
He just paid, too.
Yeah.
It's a pickup, carry out.
Employees like, I'm sorry, sir, whatever. This guy starts beefing with him.
Well, it started with a female, right? Didn't he call her a bitch?
Well, yeah. And I think this guy was there with his wife. Yeah. So he starts giving it to this woman. I mean, you're giving shit to a woman at a restaurant working for minimum wage. I mean, come on, dude. And so
it sounded like she went off after that too.
Well, so a coworker comes out and says, "Hey, what's the problem here?" Tries to deal with this cat and ends up getting smoked in the knee.
Yeah.
So, not enough guacamole? Well, you know why they don't give you quite enough guacamole?
You forgot one part, too. Oh. So they took her back. Like, all the workers and the counter was empty when that guy came up. And when he came up to see what this dude's problem was, he was bagging his food and took a cup and just lumped a bunch of guacamole in there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He did a little self-service.
I mean, this guy was an asshole on multiple levels.
Yeah. Well, the one place they don't give you enough guacamole... Oh, maybe you can get all the cream you want. Is in prison.
God's sake.
So that's why you are our Geek of the Week. Andy Dufresne. He knows.
Hey, guys.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
Now, I deal with a lot of people in Detroit and elsewhere who like to play games, but if you really want to play with me, there's no... I gotta work on that. That wording is just not quite right. There's no better way to play against me than with Come Play Detroit. Come Play Detroit is my choice for softball. Free Press takes the field this Wednesday. We've changed our name from the Freep Stars to Fake Softball. So if you're playing fake softball, you're gonna get your hands full.
By the way, I told Carlos,
Captain Carlos, to you, sir,
that his captaincy had been stripped because he didn't show enough in one outing, and therefore blew his Cy Young chances.
Yeah, isn't that?
I told him you said that.
Isn't that Scooble Kid 4-0 now or 3-0?
Yeah, it's really making the take.
See what he did last night?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
He shut him out, didn't he? Until they pulled him.
Yeah, he had 99.7 as a lefty. It's ridiculous.
I'm going to start retweeting Carlos's column every time school has a good outing.
Oh, boy. Well, you know who knows more about sports than Carlos? That's the good people that come play Detroit. We're back on track, friends. And they play all year round, offering everything from one-day tournaments to seasons that last 8 to 10 weeks. You can sign up as an individual, part of a small group, or as a full team. Either way, come play Detroit's friendly staff will help you find the right fit. And if you know me, you know I like a good deal. So go to comeplaydetroit.com and use promo code SOUL when you sign up to get 10% off your first registration. It's a great way to get in the game and support our show. So come play Detroit. Everything from sand volleyball to indoor volleyball to, well, you name it. They got it all. Come play Detroit. So we have not been getting a lot of nominations for Room 7609. This is your chance to introduce us to new bands, to introduce us to deep cuts, and to give us a story. You don't like new wave music? Well, stop me before I spin again. Give us your nomination at mlsoulofdetroit@gmail.com. Otherwise, I'm going to keep coming up with new wave classics like Music for People and this underappreciated gem that they call Time. Time.
Let yourself unwind. Erase the signs. Try another line. When the sun held us through the blinds, then I take my time, leave it all behind. When the heroes fade and the legends die, keep them warm inside. Justice right, accusations fly. When the sun held us through the blinds, then I take my time, try another line. When the heroes fade and the legends die, keep them warm inside. And remember, when those heroes fade and the legends die, keep them warm inside. And
Now, I think I said music for people. I think it's music for pleasure, isn't it? I'm already
Yes,
screwing up.
pleasure.
Music for pleasure. And that is a very pleasant, thoughtful, I don't want to say meandering, but it's a reflective ditty. And music for pleasure was not around very long. They
So
were
autobiographical for you.
very early. Well, I find a lot of pleasure in music.
No, I hear that, and I think of you walking around Scotland in the 80s with a flock of seagulls hair.
With the Alarm and with Roddy Frame and some of the other boys from the Simple Minds and who's the other guys? The Proclaimers. I would walk 500 miles with the Proclaimers.
Yeah. No, I prefer the Pretenders, but Simple Minds weren't bad.
So is it bad that I've never heard of this band?
No, they were not around very long.
Okay.
They kind of emerged early in the post-punk new wave scene, put together a couple albums, had some lineup changes and some label changes, and just kind of disappeared. But they popped up in my feed somehow, and I'm grateful they did because their music is really, really good. It's really thoughtful, and it's kind of mood music. And it's it's just nice to put on while you're doing something.
I didn't mind that at all. Actually, that was a
what?
No, the mood. I'm with Mike. By the way, could anybody
atmospheric?
Go for some tacos?
I think is the word I'm looking for.
Tacos.
You got any guacamole? It's probably safe now.
Find some tacos or just anything. Who's hungry?
Geek of the week made you hungry?
You guys didn't bring any burritos in or anything, did you?
No, sorry.
I need to bring you some breakfast burritos.
Have
I done that?
You have, yes. I forgot where, but yeah.
From Zingerman's Roadhouse.
Yes, you did. You've done that before.
I'll do that
they
again.
Were quite delicious. And now that you've mentioned them, maybe you'll get them for free.
Oh, shit. Was it Bob Talbert?
Boy, that's a dated reference.
Yeah, that's
good, though.
That's going back to my days.
Was he notorious for that?
Oh, my God. Yeah. So Bob Talbot was this old-time columnist at the Free Press, and he was a genius because he was this big, heavy dude with a ponytail, which, in the late 80s was still kind of like, what the hell's going on? It was before the comic shop guy on the Simpsons, but that's kind of what he looked like without the goatee. And he was a talented writer. He had a huge following, and he wrote every day, which is staggeringly difficult. And it was like a tidbits column, sort of like if Larry King's old column didn't suck. It was separate from Names and Faces, but it was like local stuff, like so-and-so's coming into town next week. He's great. I sat down and talked about this. Or, hey, if you missed the big spread at so-and-so's place, it's a great spot. You got it. But he was kind of known for... He was very Mazaway-esque in terms of the mentions, where it's like, oh, wow, Bob mentioned this, and it looks like he's got a case of barbecue sauce. And, hey, Bob really likes that new meat market. It's like, hey, Bob's having steaks at his house this week, and he was kind of known as, like low-level graft
Do you remember how popular he was, though? It's hard to fathom in our business having somebody like that.
Here's why he was a genius, is because half of the time he'd run letters from readers, and they'd be like, you fat bastard, you write garbage every day, you're a piece of shit. He'd run a whole column of those letters, and then 2 days later, and they were letters because you had to mail them, he'd run a whole column of letters, people saying, Bob, you're the greatest. I don't know why people are attacking you. I love how you highlight people. It's like the guy got 2 days worth of columns out of just people wailing on him and defending him. I mean, it was absolute genius. A lot of it was pablum too, but he was very popular, and he was a gifted writer. He's one of these guys from down south who came up north and kind of had the, aw shucks thing, and he became.
But you picked up the paper and you would turn to him, right? I remember.
You read him because you might find something interesting, or because you hated him, and it was just like, piece of shit. He was a mandatory read because you didn't have your phone where you could read better shit somewhere else.
He was no fan of the Drew and Mike show, I'll tell you that.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
He thought it was childish?
No, I mean, I think he ripped Drew because he was another out-of-towner and then listed all the other out-of-town morning shows.
Bob Talbot was an out-of-towner.
That came in and failed. I know that when you said that, that's kind of what reminded me. But then speaking of people getting things for free, do you remember, I don't even know what happened to the guy, but the former Fox 2 anchor Warren Pierce. Remember he was getting cars for free?
Yeah, WJR.
Is he still on JR now?
I don't know, but he was at WJR. That was mainly where he was known for.
Yeah.
What was it? It was 101.
He was getting cars for free.
It was 101, right, Mark?
What, the riff?
Yeah. No, the Drew show was 101?
Yeah, 101.1.
What, did you just get to town?
No. I just remember, I was just trying to think of why I didn't used to listen. And I mean this, no offense.
Oh, God.
No.
What?
I wanted music.
Okay.
I didn't want any talk.
Okay.
And so there were those of us back in those.
A lot of people
complete opposite of this show.
No, for sure. No, but back in those.
We play some music and the guy pulls a ripcord.
No, but back in those days, you either wanted the shenanigans of a Howard Stern style
shenanigans?
Show, or you just wanted
shenanigans,
or you just wanted to hear Nirvana. You know what I mean?
What kind of show filled with shenanigans would have a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter on to talk about taking the mayor down?
The first time I heard Nirvana was a station out of Windsor.
Crazy crank calls.
You remember what was that station?
Who? What?
It was a station out of Windsor.
89X.
89X. which now plays country.
And that's where you heard the new stuff. You had to go to fucking Canada to hear.
Well, I
They had
think
Dave
some
and
people
Chuck
would
the
say
Freak.
they had some morning show
goofballs.
shenanigans.
Yeah, they're the ones who thought saying the word penis was funny.
Oh, I didn't listen to the morning stuff. I'm just talking about at night with the music.
Okay. But you still didn't listen to the riff at night because they certainly never played Nirvana.
No, they did. They did after it became
Just trying
popular.
to take shots at my old show.
No, not at all. Not at all. What was the other classic rock? 94.
It's still there. CSX 94.7.
Well, do people still listen to the radio for music? That's the question. You're a music radio
So
expert.
I like flipping. I like flipping through the radio mainly because that's just what I used to do. So I like listening to DJs and stuff. Very rarely do I go there for music unless I just don't want to connect my phone. Because doesn't everybody just listen through their phone?
Yes.
That being
Or
said,
XM.
I'm driving around Saturday. I'll tell you the two stations, Wheels and then 105.1 The Bounce is flipping around.
Home of Trudy Daniels.
That's right.
Wheels.
Yeah, and
don't even know
Drew and
these
Mike
shows.
on Sunday mornings.
The Drew Lane show, yeah,
Drew Lane
Saturday and
show.
Sunday mornings.
Drew,
But I'm flipping through and I'm listening to two breaks by the DJs, and they both talked about the Detroit Lions' new uniforms. I'm like, this is the most interesting thing we have to talk about in a break.
Well, and what was this bullshit about?
gives a
That should have
shit?
been our Geek of the Week. Whoever said these are going to be the most stunning new uniforms ever, they're going to change the games. Like, they look like every uniform.
But it's just a boring topic anyway, isn't it?
I don't know. People really get into uniforms.
Really? Yeah,
When
they
we
do.
have
They do
stories
talk
about
about that.
uniforms, and when you say pick the best logo and stuff, people go nuts. But did they take William Clay Ford off the sleeves on these uniforms?
Yeah, they put on the helmet.
It's on the helmet. Take it off.
The point
it
of
shouldn't
all
be
of
on
this
there.
is that Drew was meant for this forum right here, where it's just a talk show, right? You don't have to worry about music. Mike has to worry about, I guess, one song a show.
But Drew talked about music. He loved.
No, he talks about music, but he didn't have to build his show around playing it.
Well,
so it's liberating.
It's kind of
right?
an interesting story. I mean, they did used to have to play songs. I think when it started, it was 8 songs an hour, which is, pretty common now to hear shows that do 8 songs an hour. Then the station got sold and management changed, and while that's happened, it's like, okay, let's get rid of this song. Let's get rid of this song. Let's get rid of it until eventually, during the changeover, it's like, let's not play any music, see what happens. And it worked. That's what people wanted.
Damn.
It's true.
I mean, have you ever been listening to a show and then they go into a song? It's like, wait, I really liked what they were talking about. That's kind of...
Well, especially if you go there to hear them
It
talk.
has to be all music or it has to be all talk.
For sure, because you go there to hear them talk. You don't want to be interrupted by music.
Sure, but that's not how that format was born.
But Detroit used to have a lot of great parody music, like JJ and the Morning Crew.
God,
All they
yeah.
had were parody songs. And Dick Purton and Purton's People, they had a whole catalog of goofball songs. You guys never really did that on
We
Drew
did.
and Mike,
Yeah,
did you?
oh yeah, we had a whole handful of parody songs. We typically would have to commission them, and a lot of them came from Bob Rivers.
How old were you, by the way,
Right.
when you started?
A day before my 21st birthday. I was
Damn.
Wow. Well,
Damn, that is
and I've been
impressive.
stuck ever since. No.
Well, you followed it to its logical place in a basement.
A couple of underpaid guys.
With total freedom
Really depressing when you think about
to
it.
do whatever you want. I mean,
an
we
empty-
don't.
in an empty
You
bank
don't
account.
have to play music anymore, yet we do.
With Kirk Gibson's underwear.
We play music because that man loves it.
People like it. Room 7609 is one of the elements of the show that people respond to the most, either with vitriol or with suggestions.
We get a response out of you when we play stuff, Sean.
Yeah.
It's dyspeptic, but it's a response.
Yeah.
I want to hear the feedback on your article.
yeah. So first, we want to thank our donors. Tamara sent us a tidy sum the old-fashioned way. She went to mlsolveddetroit.com, clicked on the
She put it in your
Venmo
G-string?
button. No. That's a stack of singles. That's the Thunder Down Under. Great Australian new wave. by the way.
Thunder Down Under.
It's also an all-male review, I think, in
Thunder
Vegas.
down.
Because they always had those signs.
I like that.
Right. Well, I
Mark's
wouldn't-
more of a lightning down under.
I wouldn't. We dance with the lady. That'd be strutting my stuff with the fellers. But they call me the Wizard of Oz. But the
Are you good with a pole?
no, I've
I mean, can you hang upside down from one and spin around?
I have thin thighs. I could probably, if I had to, if I was properly motivated. with a stack of cash, which is what Tamara sent us, with a note that said, "Thanks, guys." She did that by clicking on the Venmo button on our website. If you prefer PayPal, you can do that too. But what we really like is when you become a continuing sponsor, a contributing sponsor, what do they call it in public radio? A sustaining member of the show. And that's not a Thunder Down Under joke about sustaining members, which gets harder as you get older, I'm told. It's $5 a month, and you get the show before anybody else does, without any of the insertion ads, and you can watch the show. For $15 a month, you get all of that, plus a monthly bonus episode, and we will be posting a new bonus episode soon. Our most recent one was Ask Erica, a great episode. For $25 a month, we give you all of that, and some free merch, a autographed copy of the Kwame Sutra. And for $60 a month, not only do you get everything we mentioned before, you will get some ML Soul of Detroit wearables, a hoodie, a t-shirt, a long sleeve t-shirt, perhaps a hockey jersey if it fits you. Whatever you like, we will hook you up with something. So jump in there at $60 a month. And if you really feel sassy, let's say offer us $100 a month. You can come and sit in studio while we do this show and see the magic happen before your very eyes. Just don't go behind the curtain, because Shawn may be relieving himself. So
maybe what?
Relieving yourself, because you take breaks. That's one of the things that happens here. So I got some feedback. Let's start with the feedback from the column. This one came in this morning at 6:55.
Here, let me read it.
Oh, okay.
Huh? What? Okay.
Here, Mark, you can read this one.
Yeah, let Mark read one too. Because this is, very disappointed in the timing of your article. Detroit deserves better.
Yeah.
Is that from your editor?
That's from a Free Press reader, and I responded, and Kyle Smith's family deserves justice.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I think anybody who knows something about public officials knows they will not act unless properly motivated, and when you put them on the hot seat, they will jump. So I'm sorry this woman doesn't feel we had enough happy stuff in the Free Press.
They want just propaganda of anything good in Detroit? I mean...
plus the other thing
is... And you mentioned in your article about how much better it is now than it was in 06. Which,
and all the...
Whatever, nobody can.
But
the
really...
nuance is not a popular thing.
Yeah,
no.
I mean, Kansas City, someone was shot during the Super Bowl celebration. You are going to be safe if you go down there. You are going to have a good time. But we can't promise you that nothing will happen, that no rain will fall on your precious little quaff. So, I mean, come on. Sorry.
Quaff.
Well, the next one is from Donna, and Donna writes, Greetings. I've always tried my best to see the good in every person, but I've yet to see this in you.
Oh, dear.
Have you ever, in all caps, posted anything in all caps, positive about a person of color from Detroit or anywhere, or even a pro-Detroit article? Please share if you haven't. Perhaps I won't have such a side-eyed opinion of you. And if not, just showing the world who you are.
Yeah. So I got that one last night while I was actually on an exercise bike, and I immediately posted a link.
In Detroit, by the way.
That's right. I immediately posted a link to the story I did about Georgia Taylor, the 91-year-old woman who we worked for years when I was running for city council and when I went to the Free Press to help get a house torn down and help her purchase the lot next to her house, which she now owns and her grandchildren play there. That's just one of many examples. So I sent that to her within 15 minutes of getting that email. No response.
Of course.
So I guess not only is she going to continue to look at me with the side eye, but her other eye will not be doing her research before she runs her stupid mouth.
Just keep sending her all the good articles you did.
Yeah, so.
Until she replies.
So whatever. This happens all the time.
With
people want
unsubscribe.
to. Yeah, I'm just like, sorry, pal. This is the way it goes. So.
Yeah, no, good story.
So here's from a local police. Well, I should say a small town police chief. We're not going to name him because we aren't going to name him. Name is Doug. I always look twice when I see DPD homicide refer to a case as closed or imply that they're doing much better because X number of cases are closed. I think that term may imply something different to homicide cops versus non-cops. As far as the delayed arrest term or other quotable quotes in law enforcement, I thought this was a great one from an assistant chief. And this was from a story on Fox 2. The chief said, "The weapon fires rapid rounds relatively quickly. Most cowards carry them, and that's kind of what I classified it even that night of.
Oh, my God.
Not sure what that means, but...
it's quite the sentence.
Yeah. Well said, Doug. And then Dave sends me a note. I'm not sure where he got this. He says, ML, 6'1". I wouldn't have put you a hair over... Oh, I wouldn't have put you a short hair... that's a nice image.
Gross.
Over 5'6" after seeing the pics of you next to Kwame Kilpatrick. I guess I need to head to Caju Cafe to share a pint in person to confirm the height.
That's
Dave,
awesome.
Absolutely. And I'm actually taller than 6'1", and a half.
Yeah, you're a big dude.
But
you're very tall.
I know
big.
people think I'm 6'4". I'm 6'1" and a half.
Your presence.
Fat.
And what
You're not
people
fat.
tell me when they see me out in public, they're like, "You're taller than I thought." I'm like, "Well, how tall do you think I was?"
Well, TV.
I know,
I think
but
everybody on TV is short.
Well, you're definitely more
just not-
handsome in person.
It goes without saying.
You know?
So, Dave, I'm putting you down for that beer. Do not leave me hanging while I'm getting side-eyed by some biatch. But anyway,
it's gonna bother him.
So that's our feedback. We love to hear from you. You can write to us at mlsoulofdetroit@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Elric, on Facebook at ML Elric, and on Instagram at ML_Elric. That's where you'll get the latest on the show. We have a tremendous guest coming up in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Well, of course. Well, you're not a guest. You're a host. This is why people keep coming back.
I feel like a guest.
But we're going to have one of the attorneys from the Crumbly case joining us in 2 weeks talking about what they went through. And there's been a lot to happen in that case, including this documentary.
One of the defense attorneys?
Yes, one of the defense attorneys. And pretty interesting. I think there's a lot of there's been. Well, I'll just tell you from the beginning, the way Karen McDonald, the prosecutor in this case, was operating, I thought, boy, this is someone who's really trying to do something big here and wants to make sure the world knows. And now we find out that she had a documentary crew from ABC following her from the very beginning, which is extraordinary. And I will never criticize a public official from giving the media access, but it does kind of raise questions about, what's she angling for here?
Well,
she got her eyes on a bigger prize.
That's for a couple of weeks from now.
Fair enough, she did the job, though.
Yeah, that's for a couple of weeks from now.
She won her case, but there are some questions
Good
about
tease.
those convictions. So we'll be back with that in a couple weeks. Next week we'll have a surprise guest, and of course we hope the most important part of our show will be there, and that is you. So, and me, of course, but
yeah, and you.
And me.
Yeah, and you, definitely you. And what about Cyrus?
I think Cyrus is waiting to do what he does, which is take us out.
Can you dig that?
Can you dig it? Can you dig
it? Tonight's mysteries are stories without endings, all missing that one vital clue. Perhaps someone listening tonight knows what happened and can reveal the truth. Perhaps it's you.